Welcome to the podcast. Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about a tough topic. I am Taylor.
And I'm Matthew.
I'm really hoping to change people's perceptions, and I don't know if I'm going to be successful, but I'm going to give it a whack. I'm going to take a hack at it. Today we're talking about suffering, and suffering is not fun, right? We all know that. Matt's going to tell us a little bit about maybe some times he's suffered, or maybe some suffering he's seen in Dubai, and then we're going to talk about it. But before we do that, I'm going to share a theory that I have about suffering, and I haven't told Matt this yet. The theory is that suffering is directly proportional to the extent to which you can empathize. And I've been having conversations with people about this, and some people disagree.
That's just a theory.
Some people have very legitimate claims that contradict my theory, but other people have been wholeheartedly agreeing with it.
Yeah, sure, why not?
And I think that hopefully you will fall somewhere in between. Matthew, what do you think? Just right off the bat, what do you think about the theory that I've just asserted?
I'm still just trying to wrap my brain around it. I feel like, Taylor, you just function on such a high intellectual level that I'm constantly just trying to catch up. I definitely think there's a lot of truth behind what you had to say. The more that we begin to understand the way that the world works and the way that people work, and all the different things that have happened to us, that have just happened to humanity, that can definitely conjure up a lot of uncomfortable feelings, and suffering can come as a result of that. You're definitely spitting some truth this morning, Taylor. You got to keep it up.
You can't handle the truth!
I appreciate it, Matt. Let me see if I can get a little bit deeper here.
Deeper? What does that even mean?
Because what I'm thinking is, the more you suffer, the more you can empathize, right? When you see somebody on the side of the road, would it be more likely that you'd give them money if you had been homeless yourself? I don't know. I think that it could really go either way. And I'm also trying to assume that you don't have the view that if you give them money, they're going to go spend it on drugs or something. I'm saying there's a purely altruistic act that you have the opportunity to perform. This just happens to be a good one, of giving money to a homeless person. And would you be more likely if you were homeless, right? If you've suffered in the same way that they have, to empathize with them. Not necessarily to give them money, but to see life through their eyes easier, right? And the reason I'm asking this is because we have, people in power who maybe have never experienced the very things, the very lives and economic aspects of our economy and society that they are legislating, right? That they are controlling and that they are leaders in the field of. And so I see a real problem with there. If people have not suffered, right, the penalty of poverty, the negative aspects of poverty, then who are they to be trying to fix it? And I may be completely wrong here, but it just seems to me that suffering is really directly proportional to empathy. So Matthew, why don't you tell us a little bit about some suffering that you've seen, how minute it might be in Dubai, and maybe some suffering that you've experienced yourself as well.
Yeah, something that's particularly noticeable as far as just coming at human suffering and really poverty more specifically, is just the number of construction workers here in Dubai. If you can see right behind me, and I'm pointing at it right now with my right hand, there's a building being constructed in the background, and really there's just different infrastructure all over the place being built. And to really make all these different projects happen, all these workers are brought in from around the world, but specifically India. I guess it's not that their working conditions are bad, but it's just the lifestyles that they have can be really difficult. They're not with their families. They're not paid especially well. They just have really difficult jobs. And that can be one aspect of human suffering. Obviously, there's a lot more extreme examples, but that's just something I notice on a day-to-day basis. When I'm walking to the bus stop, when I'm walking to the grocery store, or to meet up with a friend, I just kind of look at all these different workers. They'll either be sitting on the pavement on break, or they'll be kind of completing different tasks. And part of me just like hurts for them, because I know that as human beings they deserve a better life, and yet they'll probably never be able to experience that simply because they just don't have the ability to pursue like a higher quality of life, just given their place within the world. And that can be a really tough thing to admit. But I think it's just kind of the reality of the situation.
Thank you for those insights. I think that some people in the United States might be a little bit educated on that subject of people not being paid well in that particular part of the Middle East. I know that in Qatar, you have a lot of news coming out that people building FIFA stadiums aren't being paid very well. And the United Arab Emirates is kind of operated similarly to that. And you have a lot of accusations of slave labor. And we're not making a claim on whether that's going on or not in this podcast, but we're just trying to talk about that there is suffering. And this especially seems like there's some suffering going on in the Middle East. One way that I've suffered, and this is going to sound really petty, but I really want to kind of talk about, what have I experienced, is insomnia. I think a lot of people share this in how they can't fall asleep at night. And if you can't fall asleep, you're not going to have enough energy for the next day. And if you don't have enough energy for the next day, you might not have enough self-control to put down the remote and stop watching Netflix, over and over and over. And then you stay up really late the next night, and it's just a repeating cycle. But if it all starts with something that you can't prevent, which is insomnia, then how can you really cope? And I think that, suffering, it seems so meaningless, right? Because we're here and there's so much productivity going on.
So I say to myself, I gotta find this guy. I gotta go up to his office. I gotta put his mail in the guy's hands. Otherwise she's gonna forget it. It's gonna keep coming back down here. So I go up to Pepe's office. And what do I find out? Now, what do I find out? There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided, oh, shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper. There's no Pepe Sylvia. You gotta be kidding me. I got boxes full of Pepe. All right, so I start marching my way down to Carol and HR. And I knock on her door and I say, Carol!
Things are getting done, and yet people are suffering. And it's like, it just doesn't seem right. And so I guess to some extent I'm trying to justify suffering, and by trying to equate it to the extent to which we can empathize, it seems to present somewhat of a usefulness in society in how it kind of brings people down to the level of the most impoverished so that they can feel the need to help them and see them as human beings that matter. So, not to get too much in my inner conflicts of what needs justification and what doesn't, but I really like to think about suffering as possibly a positive aspect of life, because it really gives you a flavor or a contrast to be able to see the value in a party or a great experience. And if you've suffered well, then you'll know how much better it is that you're partying or you're driving a nice car and you have all these blessings, or a family. And I think that the extent to which you suffer, really, I think, and I can't prove this, but I think it gives you a depth to life. It gives you more depth. It gives you a little bit more richness and flavor of life. And so for anybody out there who feels like they're suffering, whether it's being persecuted, you feel like you're kind of being marginalized, or whether you're legitimately in a lot of pain, whether it be from like a broken limb or kind of a disorderly mind, just know that suffering really can, in the end, be a benefit to society if you can turn that around and go empathize with people who are suffering similarly to you. So Matt, as we close, I just want to hear one last time from you, maybe a way that you've suffered personally, whether it be insomnia or being a construction worker. What something that you've experienced that wasn't particularly delightful?
One thing that comes to mind is just being here in Dubai. And that might surprise some people to hear me say that, because it's like I'm here in Dubai getting to do all this super cool stuff, meeting awesome people. It's really a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And so I'm not denying any of that. And I'm super appreciative and super thankful. But at the same time, I think something that makes it really hard is that I'm kind of like here by myself, in the sense that all my friends and family back home, they're not here to experience all this super cool stuff with me. And that can be difficult at times because shared experiences are really special. And that just kind of, once again, reiterates the power of human relationship. And so that has definitely been difficult in a lot of ways, just kind of being in an unfamiliar setting around unfamiliar people. But like Taylor has pointed out, through the course of this episode, there's so many positive things that can really grow out of our suffering and our uncomfortable feelings. And I've really seen that firsthand, even from being in Dubai these last 7 weeks, because there are those feelings of loneliness. I'm really able to kind of generate a lot of really positive things out of that, whether it be creating this podcast with Taylor or just having moments of introspection and reflection, and just being able to kind of identify these different feelings and process them in a healthy manner. Because even though things can be uncomfortable, or even though things can be painful, they wind up really producing a lot of positive characteristics within me, and they also just deepen my appreciation for stuff that I value. And so in the example that I've given, it's just really deepened my appreciation for Florida, for America, for my friends like Taylor and my family members. Like Taylor and I, we don't want to sound insensitive, because we know that a lot of our viewers may be going through some really difficult times, whether it be relationally or physically or emotionally. We're definitely with you guys, and we care about you. Just always remember that it's not for nothing. It's going to really allow you to be a more mature human being, a more whole human being, and just a more empathetic human being. And ultimately, that's what really matters in this life. Not the accumulation of wealth or the accumulation of stuff, but just our kind of personal development.
All right, Matt. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time in the great land of Dubai to give us a little bit of a synopsis and a little bit of piece of your mind into this interesting topic of suffering. And maybe we'll come back to it in the future, but I really appreciate your time. Listeners, if you would like and subscribe and do all that stuff in the appropriate boxes, don't just click anywhere because it's not going to work. But we really appreciate you guys watching. And goodbye.